my son, when we cross the mountains, this is how we will trade with the town dwellers. We say, we make deal, yes. You give us gold and women. We no attack. They give us the gold and women. We say, you not give enough gold or women, so we attack. We attack anyway and plunder their wealth. When the wealth is plundered, what do we say?
We make deal, yes?
The Hung are a nomadic, oriental race of hunters and gatherers, shorter and squatter than the people of Cathay, but otherwise resembling that kind of person. The Hung are perhaps the most easternly of all Northman tribes, inhabiting the lands of the Chaos Wastes to the north of Cathay, and the chilly lands of Nagaroth in the New World. The Hung are considered horsemen par excellence, and they breed tough small horses on their cold mountain slopes, which would survive there where larger southern war horses would starve. They ride these into battle when they attack the more civilized lands of the south, such as the petty yet equally barbaric kingdoms of the Dark Elves. Perhaps out of all the people living in the far north, the people of the Hung are the most primitive of them all. Even though their brethren in the west have built themselves a selection of settlements and a few even massive fortresses, the people of the Hung can count themselves no better than primitive hunters and gatherers, with little or no concept of even the barest forms of civilization. Instead, these wandering nomads scour the land in search of plunder and battle to sustain themselves. And such is their reputation that the people of Grand Cathay built the mighty Great Bastion, one of the largest walls ever created, for the sole sake of keeping these barbarians from destroying their kingdom. On the other side of the world, there are other humans who serve the dark gods. Separated from the Kurgan by the great desert, they are often contained to the lands north of Cathay, or across the land bridge in the northern reaches of the New World. Like the Kurgan of the Eastern Steppes, as we call them in the Empire at least, the Hung raid their neighbours, mounting attacks against the fabulous cities of Cathay, or the sinister cities of the Dark Elves. They are almost constantly in a state of war, the reason simple. They believe the purpose of their existence is to fight, to kill, and to slaughter. By fighting amongst themselves, the Kurgan and others, they glorify themselves and their gods. Like the Kurgan, the Hung are nomads, but instead of riding horses, they use tough ponies, bred for endurance and survival in the harsh climes of their hunting grounds. These people live in the saddle. Some say they were even born there. Each member of the tribe carries on his stout steed a filthy woolen tent, and everything he needs to get by. The Hung see all members of their tribe as equals, and make no distinction between man and woman. There are many smaller tribes, including the Yin, Qian, Tukar, Hmong, Angkols, Weitu, Manchu, Dreaded Woe, and the Kuj, although they are all part of the broader Hung culture. Also, like the Kurgans, the Hung are a roving people, and thus their tribal boundaries cannot be marked by a simple frontier on a map. While they pay more regard to their greater tribe over and above their itinerant kin, these tribes hold no compunction about merging with others to form great alliances, or devolving and reforming as the winds of circumstance change. This ever-shifting loyalty does lead them to consider bonds and bargains made with other races as irrelevant. They feel no dishonor in breaking these pacts, or indeed in killing the other parties, and so have gained a reputation for being sly, deceitful, and treacherous. Indeed, the Cathians use the phrase, word of a hung, to denote a worthless promise. Though they owe their allegiance to the greater tribe, the hung honor no promises and abide by no pacts. They are famous for their treachery and for their willingness to kill each other as well as others they meet. They are a sly people, cunning in their dealings and quick to double deal. For example, they might encircle a town and promise to leave the town unscathed if the people give over their daughters. Once the town complies with the wishes, the hung butcher the townspeople and burn down all the buildings simply because they can. They have a taste for fine things, so they snatch up gold, silks, which they display proudly whenever they settle into camp. Despite their pretense, they know nothing of civilization and are an unsophisticated lot. In truth, they are not much more than simple hunter-gatherers, and the hunting aspect forms a cornerstone of their culture. They see each hunt as an opportunity to prove their strength and courage, so they prowl the dark places of the Chaos Wastes, looking for some deadly spawn or mutated, nameless creature to kill and bring back as food. One thing the hung do value more than treasure are their hunting dogs. They keep a vicious breed of canine that's so abused and malnourished it's hardly recognizable as a dog. Their cruelty instills a sense of loyalty in these stupid beasts, so they run alongside their masters into battle, savagely tearing foes apart. The hung extend the same treatment to their steeds, which they feed a mixture of grains and human blood to make them fierce and unpredictable. The hung's territory does not produce much in the way of food, so their diet can be macabre. They readily devour game and fish, but when hunting is scarce they feed on rats, insects, and even lice in their bodies. Some witnesses report seeing these savages devour the afterbirth from a mare's foaling, and failing that, they drink the blood from their steeds, and even turn to cannibalism if necessary. The only structures they inhabit are woolen tents that they carry, in which they make their encampments. Obscure legends speak of hung cities, hidden somewhere in the steppes or in the mountains to the north. These places are supposedly great centers for their worship, and guard the fabulous treasures the hung have plundered and stolen over the centuries. More than one treasure-seeker has departed from Cathay and the Empire in order to find these hidden cities, and never returned. If such stories have any basis in fact, then it's from the lavish encampments of the largest tribes. There are spoils of their raiding such as silk and gold and carpets, displayed with such garish opulence that they could be considered travelling palaces. Despite the displays of borrowed civilization, they know nothing of more sophisticated ways of life. They do not even know how to build a bridge across a river. Rather, they prefer to pile their possessions on top of their horses and swim them across, holding on to their tails like rats. They live still at the level of hunter-gatherers, like humanity's distant ancestors. Indeed, the hunt forms a major part of the hung existence. At the lowest level it provides them their food and sustenance in the form of game. At its highest, a challenge to their champions and heroes to venture north to the desolate mountains and hillsides of the wastelands, and there prove their worth to their gods by bringing down fierce mutated creatures and ferocious spawn. They train animals in this as well. Their hunting dogs are so bestial and bloodthirsty that they even follow their masters into battle, and some tribes also train war birds, such as eagles and hawks. Their mounts are ponies, short and stocky with a dense coat that allows them to endure the wasteland winter. Despite their size, they are capable of traveling great distances, sometimes as much as 100 leagues in 3 days. Their ponies graze as they travel, rooting between the snow for mosses and grass. The Hung have been known to feed their ponies flesh to promote their fighting spirit, giving them a bitter temper, much like their riders. The Hung themselves have no pride in what they consume, for they will eat game and fish when the times are good, but when times are hard they have no compunction in digging for roots from the ground or snaring rats or other rodents for meat. Stories tell of them even ingesting lice, human flesh, or sucking blood from their own horses. This abhorrent behavior is compounded by the filthy conditions in which they live, for they refuse to wash their bodies or their clothes or bury their refuse, for they believe it will anger their gods. Both men and women mutilate themselves in order that they may present a more fearsome or lovely to a Hung visage.
These unwashed hordes of the Hung represent everything I hate about humans. They stink, they're fools, and they are all too easily corrupted by chaos.
One might think the Hung would leave their lands, given its conditions. And they do, but only to raid. They remain in their hunting grounds because they believe the gods dwell in all things there. When lightning strikes, they see the image of the blood god. In their own leavings they see the Lord of Decay. As a result, they keep no shrines or altars, though they do construct monoliths as the Kurgan do. Instead, these foul people honor their gods by praying to crude idols, or giving them thanks at mealtimes by rubbing their meat and broth into the coats of their steeds. Most recently, many Hung have fallen under the control of Marathi, the dark elf hag queen and mother of Malekith, the Witch King. To reinvigorate the cult of Slanesh amongst her people, she and a coven of cultists travelled north to wrest control of the Hung for her own sinister purposes. A great many tribes joined her, and followed her south to Lustria, though to what end none can say.
The Kurgan tribes are not alone in the wastes of chaos. Far beyond the eastern steppes are a people of wanderers and vagabonds known as the Hung. Thankfully, they rarely find their way into the old world, being content to fling themselves against a great wall of Cathay, or to sell their lives in battle against the Drukai of Nagoroth. Though removed from the affairs of the Empire, the Hung are a vicious race and have in the past emerged from their distant land to lend their might to the armies of chaos.
Never trust the Hung. Destroy and eat them, yes, but never trust them.
Them Kurgan is bad, but the Hung, they just nasty. We must certainly trade with the Hung. It is in our interest to trade with all the people of the world's roof. Whilst I admit I would never turn my back on a Hung, I am more than happy to accept his slaves.
The Tong are one of the most infamous tribes within the north, feared by all other Northmen. The Kurgan and the Hung are just samples of the kinds of savage people that live in the Chaos Wastes. There are countless tribes of insignificant size individually, but when combined, they become a formidable force. Among them, there are those who strike fear, even to the hearts of those servants of chaos who dominate these wastes. Centuries ago, there emerged a great host of warriors from the distant east. They carved a bloody swathe through the lands, destroying any tribe that got in their way. Not even the Kurgan could stand against them. Those who tried were utterly destroyed. These raiders were the Tong. The reason for their success stemmed from their complete and total disregard for their own well-being. They threw themselves onto the spears and swords of their enemies to hack their way to the other side. If disarmed, they rent their foes with their bare hands. One by one, they cut a path through the Kurgan hordes. Then, inexplicably, they stopped and turned back the way they had come. The Tong vanished, and the tribes of the eastern steppes regained their strength. While Azavar Kull defeated his rivals and gained the crown of domination from Be'lakor, the Tong readied a new offensive, marching forth from their distant lands once more. The hordes of chaos spilled out of the Chaos Wastes, and invaded Kislev as recounted in dozens of tales about the Great War against Chaos, but in their footsteps came the despoilers of the East. Thankfully the Tong never joined the rest of the hordes. Instead, this horde turned south to slaughter the wandering tribes of men. They also wiped out warband after warband of hobgoblins, burning and killing everything in their path. The horde raged for 5 years, seeking out the greatest tribes and killing them all. Their bloodlust slaked, they returned unchallenged back to the north, vanishing into the depths of the Chaos Wastes. Since the Great War, the Tong have never resurfaced as a horde. From time to time, a small warband might emerge, joining the occasional incursion, but thankfully, never in the numbers they presented centuries ago. So rare are these warriors that no one knows for sure what they look like, except to say that the most mutated and hideous of all the northern tribes are among the Tong.
Your blood tastes so sweet, like sugar.